Hilchos Dei'os Perek Revi, the laws of personal development, chapter 4. Quite a long chapter, so let's see if we can get through it in a good way. Says the Rambam Halacha Aleph, Ho'il, since we said at the end of yesterday's Perek, Vehayot Haguf Bari V'Shalem, for the body to be healthy and complete, Midarchei Hashem Hu, it's one of the ways of Hashem. Having a healthy body is godly. Shaharei Efshar, Sheyavin, or Yeda Davar, Midiat HaBorei. It's impossible to understand or know anything from the knowledge of Hashem. V'hu Choleh, when you're sick. Lefichach, therefore, tzarich laharchik adam atzmo, a person must distance himself, midvarim ha'me'abdin et haguf, from things which destroy the body, ulahanhig atzmo, and to behave himself, bidvarim ha'mavrin v'ha'machlimim, with things that cause health and cause strength in the body. Many of the commentaries, and the Rebbe especially points out, that having a healthy body is not the way of Hashem. Hashem doesn't have a body. You have to add in the words, midarchei avodat Hashem. It's the way of serving Hashem. But regardless, because you have to have a healthy body, it's a way of serving Hashem, so you also have to take care of your nutrition and make sure that you bring into your body only things that are good and not things that are destructive. The Rambam could have stopped right here, and that would have been a great Jewish law. And every person would know that you have to behave in a healthy way. However, the Rambam spends now a whole chapter detailing his dietary recommendations, food recommendations, health recommendations, and the commentaries discuss why, especially since the nature of people's bodies changed, and what worked 1,000 years ago doesn't work today. So why would the Rambam include in his book of Halacha, which actually becomes eternal Torah, why would he include such a detailed menu? And the Rebbe explains because the Rambam mainly wrote a spiritual diet. The diet in this parak applies mostly to the health and body, to the health of the soul, not so much of the body. That's the eternal aspect of it. In his time, the physical and spiritual worlds were aligned to the point that even the physical bodies reflected that their diet was good based on this spiritual diet. But nowadays, when we don't have the physical elements, we still have the spiritual elements.
But even today,
yes, nevertheless, even today, many people have studied the Rambam's medical recommendations, and remarkably, tons and tons, most of the Rambam's recommendations are agreed upon by today's medical professionals. I read yesterday a wonderful paper. Maybe I'll put a link in the description to the YouTube video. You can see it. It's a great read. And he compared the USA health recommendations, the Netherlands health recommendations, the WHO, the World Health Organization recommendations, and the Mediterranean diet, which is a very popular diet comparative to the Rambam. And you see how there's basically only 3 points of disagreement. Everything else is pretty much fully agreed upon by today's professionals, considering that the Rambam, in his time, the medical science was so primitive, they didn't even know about arteries yet, and blood cells, and nothing of that sort. And yet, so much of it matches. But of course, the Rambam doesn't need our haskama, he doesn't need our agreement. I'm not going to go into all the details of it. But we're going to learn what the Rambam says. It was certainly applicable in his time, and for our neshama, it's also applicable in its way. So let's see what the Rambam says. What is the diet that a person should follow?
Did the Rambam know all these halachos from Torah or from...
There's a big argument about that. The Malbim, who was a contemporary sage, he wrote a whole book called Aleli Trufa, where he traces the sources for everything the Rambam says into the Talmud. Like he wants to find some allusion to some story or some like off-the-cuff remark that some Tana or Amora made that hints to the fact that these dietary recommendations are true. Even he himself admits that in the end that he didn't find sources for everything. Aleli Trufa, yeah. Yeah, it's available. But the Rambam, in his own lifetime, wrote also medical works. There's a famous work that's called Pirkei Moshe, or in English it's called Medical Aphorisms. He wrote it to his son, actually, 1,500 instructions on how to live. And he writes in the beginning of his book that I didn't make up any of this stuff. I gathered the current wisdom, especially from Galen. He was like Galen was the primary Greek physician of that time. He was called the divine Galen. He was considered to have like the most advanced knowledge of the human body. And the Rambam writes clearly that he just was melaket. He just gathered in the best advice of his book. So the Rambam was not scared to use other sources. And later on in Hilchot Kiddush HaChodesh, he writes clearly that we got some of these conclusions from the Greeks, and just because it came from them, if it's true, we don't care where we got it from. in the end, it was incorporated to Torah. So that's why if we learn chapter 4 of Hilchot Dei'os, we have to make Birkat Torah before we learn it, because it's Torah. If we learn Galen's books, we don't have to make a blessing on that because it doesn't become holy. But be that as it may, that's the Rambam's diet. The Eluhain. These are the behaviors that a person should adopt to be healthy. Le'olam. First of all, always lo yochal adam ela kishehu ra'ev. A person should only eat when he's hungry, v'lo yishteh ela kishehu tzameh, and only drink when he's thirsty. Ve'al yashhen kavav afilu rega echad. Do not hold in your bodily needs, even for a moment. Ela kol zman shetzarich lehashtin o lehasechet raglav. Every time you need to urinate or cover your feet, which is a euphemism for going to the bathroom in solid waste. Ya'amod miyad, get up right away, interrupt whatever you're doing, and go to the bathroom. That's the principles. So eating and drinking only happens when you're thirsty. Americans don't know about that. We eat and drink whenever we want. But you should only eat and drink when you're thirsty and hungry. And bathroom is paramount. Halacha bet. Lo yochal adam ad shetitmaleh kreso. When you do eat, you shouldn't eat till your belly is full and bursting. Ela yifchat kemo revia misovato. You should keep it under about a quarter of your fill. So only eat 3/4 what technically would fill up your stomach. You should not drink water during a meal. Ela ma'at. If you have to, only a little bit. Umazug beyayin, diluted with wine. Only when the food begins to digest in your stomach. That's when you should drink what you need to drink. Even then, don't increase, don't drink too much water. Even after the food has digested. You also should not sit down to a meal until you check your body very well. Perhaps you might need the bathroom. And bathroom takes over everything, which means you'd be interrupting your meal, which isn't a healthy thing to do. So before you start to eat, make sure you don't have to go to the bathroom.
It's the interrupting?
Huh?
Because it's...
That's what it seems like. It's an interrupting thing. You don't want to, when you eat, it's in those days when they ate, they sat down to eat. Some people had the custom even to sit on a couch, and recline. It was a full-on experience. Lo yochal adam, a person also should not eat ad sheyelech kodem achila, till he takes a walk before he eats. Ad sheyatchil gufo lachom, so that his body begins to heat up. O yasem melacha, or do some kind of labor. O yityaga beyega acher, or exert yourself in some other way. Klalo shel davar, the general principle here is ya'aneh gufo v'yiga kol yom. You should pain your body and exercise, essentially. Exert yourself every day, baboker in the morning. Ad sheyatchil gufo lachom, till your body begins to heat up. V'yishkot ma'at, then rest a little bit. Ad shetityashev nafsho, until you regain your composure. Ve'ochel, and then you eat. The Rambam makes no mention of davening in the morning. What happened to that? Really? Many of the commentaries say that the Rambam over here is strictly discussing medical advice. He's not even bringing in Judaism into this. This is a simple, from a medical standpoint. Of course, as a Jew, you have to incorporate all the things that you need, including davening, including the Shema, of course, and all those things. But the first thing in the morning, he says over here, is to exercise. The Rebbe once pointed that the verse in Job says, Adam le'amal yulad. A person is born to toil. So there's a hint there that since the whole person is born to toil, so the first thing in the morning you should do is toil. Do a little exercise. Pickleball also is good. If you were able to wash yourself in hot water after you exercise, that's even greater. And you wait a little bit, and then you eat your morning meal. Halacha gimel. Le'olam, always, when a person eats, yeshev bimkomo or yital small, sit in place or recline to the left. V'lo yehalech, v'lo yirkav. You should not be walking or riding. V'lo yiga. You should not be exercising. V'lo yizazeh gufo. Neither should you be shaking your body, shocking it in any way. V'lo yetayel, nor taking a stroll. Ad sheyitakel hamazon shebemeyav, until the food digests in your stomach. V'chol hametayel achar achilato. O sheyagea. If you immediately walk, take a stroll after you eat or after you exercise, harei zeh mevi al atzmo cholaim ra'im v'kashim. Know that you're bringing upon yourself bad and tough sicknesses. Halacha dalet, let's talk about sleep. Hayom v'halayla. The day and night together is esrim v'arba sha'ot, 24 hours. Dai lo la'adam. It's enough for a person lishon shlishan, to sleep for a third of them. Shehu shmona sha'ot, which is 8 hours a night. V'yiyu besof halayla. You should sleep at the end of the night. Kedei shetiyeh mitchilat shnato. So that from the beginning of your sleep, ad sheta'aleh hashemesh, till sunrise will be exactly shmona sha'ot, will be 8 hours, v'nimtza, and it will turn out, omed mimitato, you're going to get up from your bed, kodem sheta'aleh hashemesh, before sunrise. Because, some commentaries say, of the Shema. Ideally, you're supposed to read the Shema just before sunrise, and daven vatikin. Shmona Esrei begin with nets. So here he does incorporate something Jewish, according to some commentaries, that you should get up before sunrise so that you can daven with the sunrise. Some people say that when it says enough to sleep 8 hours, it means that medically you don't have to sleep more. But if you can get away with less, then you could sleep less. The Rebbe seems to interpret that no, it's a healthy person should sleep for 8 hours. There's a hint for this actually. The pasuk says yashanti for 8 hours. Huh? Well, somebody asked the Rebbe why he doesn't sleep enough. So the Rebbe says he gets 8 hours every 48 hours. That's good for him. Because the verse says in Iyov, yashanti az yanuach li. When I sleep, then I rest. So the word az has the gematria of 8. So the commentaries say, yashanti az, if I sleep for 8, yanuach li, then I'm going to be rested. So 8 hours every 24 hours. But the Rebbe said, li, in the end of the verse, is 40 hours, and az is 8. So you take 8 and 40, you get 48. So 8 every 48 is also good for him. But in the Rambam, it's 8 every 24. Halacha hey. Lo yishan adam, a person should not sleep, lo al panav, not on his face, v'lo al orpo, not on his back, ela al tzido, rather on his side. B'tchilat halayla, in the beginning of the night, outside small on the left, or b'sof halayla, outside yamin, and the end of the night on your right. Your body will do this if you train yourself. It's not like you have to actively, in the middle of your sleep, change sides. V'lo yishan samuch la'achila, you should not sleep immediately after eating, ela yamtin achar achila, kemo shalosh or arba sha'ot. You should wait about 3-4 hours after you sleep. Even today, look on Google, 3 hours is the expert recommendation. After eating, v'lo yishan bayom. Here we go. No sleeping by day.
No napping, huh?
You shouldn't sleep by day. Halacha vav. Dvarim hameshalshelim et bnei me'ayim. Things that loosen the bowels, laxatives. They make you go to the bathroom easier. Kigon anavim, like grapes, uteinim and figs, vitutim. Today in modern Hebrew, vitutim means strawberries, but in the Rambams it means mulberries, which are similar. Those longer, like blackberries. Va'agasim and pears. Some say agasim in the Rambam means plums or apricots. Va'avatichim and watermelons, uminei kishuim, uminei melafafonot, and types of zucchinis and cucumbers. Or some texts have me'ei kishuim, the insides, the pulp and the seeds of the zucchini and the cucumbers. Ochelotam ha'adam batchila kodem achila. These things, these laxative foods, should be eaten in the beginning before your meal. V'lo ya'arvem im hamazon. Do not mix them with the food. Ela shohem ma'at. Wait a little bit. Ad sheyitz'u mibeten ha'elyon, until they leave your upper stomach. V'ochel mezono, and then eat your main meal. That's for laxatives. Udvarim sheme'amtzinet b'nei me'ayim, things which tighten up and could add to constipation of the bowels, kigon rimonim, like pomegranates, uprishim, and quinces. I actually brought a quince today. It's pretty rare. Chabush, exactly. This is a quince. Right here. So these are the prishim the Rambam refers to. V'tapuchim, and apples, ukrustumulin. Yeah, I know. Just wanted to show it. Krustumulin is also an argument of exactly what it is. Some people say it's a crustamine pear. In the Roman times, it was known as a very great pear. Today, they associate it with what's called the European pear, or if you're into science, the Pyrus communis. That's like a species of pear. Bottom line, it's something similar to that, and it can cause constipation. So these things, ochelotan techef limzono, if you're going to eat them right after your food. V'lo yarbeh le'echol mehen, but don't eat too much, because the Rambam, it comes up as a theme that loose bowels was like the key to health. In those days, first of all, they didn't have laxatives the way we do today, so it was fully dependent on your diet, the way you went to the bathroom. And according to the Rambam, that was like the cure for everything. He always said, if you can secure that you're going to the bathroom easily, you're on a good track. So he's very into avoiding things that constipate and getting into things that open up the bowels. Halacha zayin. Kishiyirtzeh adam le'echol. When a person would like to eat b'sar of u b'sar behema ke'echad, chicken and meat together, ochel batchila b'sar ha'of. Your policy should be, eat the chicken first. V'chen beitzim u b'sar of. If you have eggs and chicken, ochel batchila beitzim. First eat the eggs, then the chicken. B'sar behema daka u b'sar behema gasa. Thin animal meat and thick animal meat, which basically means cattle versus sheep. Ochel batchila b'sar daka. First you eat the thinner meat, the ovine, what's called, and then you eat the bovine. First the sheep animal meat and then the cow meat. Le'olam yakdim adam davar hakal. The principle is always take the lighter foods in first, u'ma'acher hakaved, and delay the heavier foods to the second. Halacha ches bimot hachama, in the summertime, ochel ma'achalim hakarim. You should eat colder foods. Cold, the commentaries explain, means unseasoned. V'lo yarbeh bitvalim, and you also shouldn't use many spices in your foods. V'ochel et hachometz. So they say it means the food should be unseasoned, and even if you're eating spices or herbs on their own, you shouldn't be marbeh in them. V'ochel et hachometz, exactly, and eat vinegar. Ubimot hagshamim, in rainy days, the rainy season, ochel ma'achalim hachamim. You should eat food as they're seasoned. Umarbeh bitvalim, and use many types of spices. V'ochel ma'at min hachardal min hachiltit. And if you're eating mustard or chiltit, which is called in asafoetida, it's like a herb. They make powders out of it today. It's called chilba in Hebrew, I believe, or chilba. you should eat a little bit of that in the rainy times. But no mustard in the summer times. Huh?
What's a hilva called in English?
Asafoetida. Check it up online. You'll see it's an herb. Yeah.
Fenugreek, I think.
It's a family. Yeah. That's tiltan in Hebrew is fenugreek. I saw the commentaries ask, how could Avraham Avinu feed the angels tongue with mustard? It was on Pesach in the summertime. You only eat chardal in the wintertime, according to the Rambam. So the commentaries say that when you're dipping it in mustard, it's okay. Talking about eating mustard straight up, you only do that in the wintertime, not in the summertime. The al derech zu,
Pesach is not summer.
yeah, it's not hagshamim. V'al derech zu, in the same way, holech ve'oseh b'mekomot hakarim u'v'mekomot hachamim. You follow the climates. It's not so much the time of year. You have to follow colder places, hotter places. B'chol makom u'makom hara'oi lo. In every place, you do what's best for it. Halacha tes. Yesh ma'achalot shehem ra'im biyoter ad me'od. There are certain foods that are super bad, very bad for the body. V'ra'oi la'adam shelo le'ochlan le'olam. A person should never eat them if he can. Go on hadagim hagdolim hamluchim hayeshanim. Big salted aged fish. There was no refrigeration in those days, so this was, Rambam associated it with very various dangers to eat big salted aged fish. What do we have here? Big salted aged fish. Lox.
דגים נקבים היום.
V'hagvina hamelucha hayeshana, and salted aged cheese. V'hakmehinu pitriot, truffles and mushrooms. V'habasar hamaliach hayashan, and salty aged meat. V'yayin migito, and wine straight from the press without having let it rest for a while. V'tavshil sheshaha, cooked foods that have waited. Ad shanadaf rechot, till it's giving a smell off. Again, no refrigeration, so the only solution you have is to salt things, and salting didn't do well for the food. And certainly if you left food out, now it smells, it's no good. If any food has a bad smell or a bitter smell, for the body that's like poison. Then you have other foods that are bad, but they're not as bad as the first ones. Therefore, what should a person's behavior towards them be? It's befitting for a person to only eat them a little bit. And with a break, with intervals of many days. You shouldn't habitate yourself that your food should be from them. Don't make it into a custom. Or even to eat them with your food, even if they're not your primary dish. Okay, go on. What are some examples of these bad foods, but not so bad? Dagim gdolim, just big fish. Not salted, not aged, but they're big. Ugvina, regular cheese. V'chalav sheshaha.
זה לא בריא, כן, טונה, סלמון.
Yeah, large fish. Even today, if you look at the health dietary,
Because of
yeah,
mercury. Yeah.
Mercury
there you go.
Mercury does not, the body does not.
It might dissolve.
Because of the mercury, there it is. Gvina and cheese. V'chalav sheshaha achar shenechalav 24 sha'ot. Milk that has been delayed after its milking 24 hours. Today, the health guidelines is if it hasn't been pasteurized. It's the same idea. Stay away from milk that's not.
Pasteurized.
Yeah, because and so in those days, I guess after 24 hours, it lost its healthfulness, and the bad stuff was more than the good stuff. Ubisar shvarim gedolim utyashim gedolim, the meat of big oxen and big sheep. V'hapol and fava beans. I brought that too, so we can see what that looks like. This is a fava bean. He says stay away from them. Yeah, if you crack them, you see they're a little bit like there's these big beans, geschmacka beans, and he says stay away. There's a more specific species which is called the horse bean that some people say the Rambam is referring to over here. But the whole family in general, he says, seems to be bad. The hadashim and lentils, the hasapir and cowpeas. I also brought some of that.
Wow, you're a good teacher.
Check that.
They don't do that.
Check this out. These are cowpeas.
Black eyed peas.
Black eyed peas, yeah.
Black-eyed
That's the bigger family. The black eyes.
Yeah.
And some say this refers to chickpeas over here. Sapir is chickpeas. But most of the Mefarshim say it refers to cowpeas. And again, there's a whole family of these black-eyed peas. They have a whole bunch of variations. It's not exactly clear which one the Rambam is referring to. Many of them have only been cultivated and developed in the last couple of centuries. So like 1,000 years ago, there could have been only just one species.
Did you buy it just for demonstration or you
No,
making it in your
no, we're
house?
making challenge with this.
So you can eat it. Put it in the jar.
The lechem seorim and barley bread. The lechem matzot and matzah bread. Stay away from. The hakruv and cabbage, the chatzir and leeks. V'habtzalim and onions, v'hashumim and garlic, v'chardal and mustard, v'hatznon and radish. Kol elu ma'achalim ra'imhem. These are bad foods. Ein ra'ui la'adam le'echol me'elu. A person should not eat from these ela me'at ad ma'od. Very, very little. Ubiyimot hagshamim, and even if only in the rainy season. But in the summer season, lo yochal mehen klal, don't eat from them at all. The hapol and the fava beans that we saw before, the adashim and the lentils bilvad alone, ein ra'oi le'ochlan, those should not be eaten, lo b'yemot hachama v'lo b'yemot hagshamim. Not in the summer, not in the winter, no time at all, stay away. The hadluin and squash, ochlin mehen b'yemot hachama, you eat them in the summertime. That's the only time you can eat them. Halacha yud. V'yesh ma'achalot shehim ra'im. Now there's a third category. Also bad foods, ve'enan kimo elu, but they're not as bad as even the second list in the last halacha. Teheimen, they are of hamayim, water birds, like duck, etc. V'nei yonah haktanim, small doves. V'hatmarim and dates, v'lechem kalui b'shemen, bread that has been toasted with oil, or lechem shenilosh b'shemen, or a bread whose dough has been kneaded with oil. V'hasolet shenipuota kol tzarka, and flour which has been sifted. Totally, ad shalom nishara bareach mursan, till no bran is left. You want to have a little bit of bran in the flour. The hatzir, the hamurias, fish brine, and pickled fish oil. Ein ra'oi laharbot ma'achalot elu, don't have too much of these foods. The adam shu chacham v'kovesh et yitzro. The Rambam now says about the last three halachas, all the bad things. A person who is wise and can overpower his yetzer. V'lo yimashech achar ta'avato, and does not get pulled after his desires. V'lo yochal min hanizkarim klum, and doesn't eat any of the above mentioned foods. Ela im nitzrach lahem lirfuah, unless prescribed by a doctor. He needs them for medicine. Harei ze gibor, he is a strong man. The commentaries say that the Mishnah says, Ezeu gibor hakovesh et yitzro. Who is the strong man? He who overpowers his yetzer. You might think it's only a spiritual thing. If you win the wars in your spiritual wars. Says the Rambam, he uses this language here to tell us that it applies even to physical things. If you overpower your war with food, you're also considered a gibor of the Mishnah. Huh? And it's any lust, exactly. Halacha Yud Aleph. Le'olam yimna adam atzmo mi perot ha'ilanot. The Rambam was not a proponent of eating fruit. He said you should always hold yourself back from fruit of the trees. V'lo yarbeh mehen, never eat too much from them. Afilu yeveshin, even dry. Ve'en tzarich lomar tubim, and needless to say, fresh. In that paper that I mentioned before, that's the only thing that they fully disagree on. Eating fresh fruit today is considered to be extremely healthy, but that's because we have so many pesticides and so many ways to take care of all the bacteria. Food storage in those days was terrible.
Well, the pesticides gets into the food too. Into the fruit.
That's the other side of it. Okay, that's the other side of it.
Eat organic.
Okay, even organic is much, much better. Today we treat it incredibly special. It seems like that
those days.
it seems like after a while, shortly after they came off the tree, they would get wormy and easily full of bacteria. I'm not sure. The Rambam says stay away from fruits.
I think eating a lot of fruits is bad for you. It's full of sugar. Packed
A
with
lot of fruit, but you should eat. But fresh fruit are part of a healthy diet.
a little bit of fruit here and there. That's not a lot. A little bit here and there.
A little here and there? Okay. Okay, so not too much, even dry, certainly fresh. Aval kodem she'it bashlu kol tzarkan. If you eat a fruit before it's fully ripe, like this quince over here, it's not fully ripe. Harein kacharavot laguf. It's like putting a sword into your body. V'chen hacharuvim ra'im le'olam. Carob is also bad forever. V'chol ha'pirot chamutzin. All tart fruits ra'im are bad. Ve'ein ochlin mehen ela ma'at. And you only eat them a little bit. B'mot hachama in summertime. Uvi mekomot hachamim in a hot climate. There are three exceptions: figs, grapes, and almonds. Le'olam tovim are always good. Ben yetuvin, ben yivishim, whether fresh or dry. Ve'ochel adam mehem kol tzarko. You could fill yourself from them. Have a meal of these things. However, do not eat them constantly. Don't make them your everyday diet. Afal pi shehem tovim mikol pri ha'ilanot, even though they're the best out of all the fruits of the trees. Halacha Yud Bet. Hadvash v'hayayin, honey and wine. Ra'lak tanim bi'afel askenim. Bad for youngsters, good for elder people. The kosher can be motag shamim. Yayin. Kosher can be motag shamim. It certainly applies in the rainy time. But in the summertime, a person should always eat shnei shlishei mashu ochel b'motag shamim, 2/3 of what he eats in the rainy season. So eat less in the summer, more in the winter. Halacha Yud Gimel. Here we get to the point about the bathroom that I made before. Le'olam yishtadel adam. A person should always try sheyu me'av rafin kol yamav, that his bowels should be loose all his days. V'yeh karov l'shilshul ma'at, even a little bit close to diarrhea. V'zeh klal gadol b'refuah. This is a huge principle in medicine. Kol zman shahari'in nimna o yotzei bekoshi. Anytime solid waste is being held back or it's coming out toughly, chalaim ra'im ba'im. You can be sure bad sicknesses are on the way. So what should a person use to loosen his bowels? If they get a little bit constipated. If he was a young man, yochal baboker, every morning he should eat miluchim, salty greens, shlukim, that are well cooked, mitubalin, and are seasoned, b'shemen zayit, uvemurias, uvemelach, with olive oil, pickled fish oil, and salt, below pat, but no bread. The commentaries say that meluchim are referring specifically to a herb that's called cress. It's a little vegetable, you eat it, and you season it with shachalayim, ani choshev. Shachalayim? Shchalim, I don't know. Shchalim. Shin chet lamed yud mem, I believe. Oh, or another alternatively, yishtem mei shelek shel tradin okruv. Drink barsht, the cooked water of beets. That works even today, they say. Okruv, or cabbage. B'shemen zayit umurias umelach, seasoned again with olive oil, pickled fish oil, and salt. And that's only if you're young. If you're elder, yishtet dvash, mazug b'mayim chamim, baboker. In the morning, eat a little hot water and honey mixed. V'yishhek kemo arba shaot, wait another 4 hours. V'achar kach yochal seudato, and then eat your meal. V'yaseh ken yom echad, o shlosha, o arba'a yamim, in tzarich lekach, do for 1 day, for 3 days, for 4 days if you need, ad sheyirpu me'av, until your bowels loosen. Halacha yudalid, v'od klal acher amru b'biyut haguf, another major principle that he said about the health of the body. Kol zman she'adam mit'amel v'yagea harbe, as long as a person is working himself, exerting himself a lot, ve'eno savea, keeps himself never too full, v'ume'av rafin, and his bowels loose, en choli ba alav, no sickness will ever come upon him, v'kochom itchazek, and not only that, he'll actually get stronger, v'afilu ochel ma'achalot hara'im, even if you eat a bad menu. So if you find yourself, you can't resist the bad foods, make sure you keep a good regimen of exercise, and that your stomach is working well, your metabolism, and then you're good. Halacha tedvav, on the other hand, v'chol mishu yeshev lavetach, anybody who sits securely, couch potato, ve'eno mitamel, and doesn't do any exercise, o misha mashen nekavav, or you delay going to the bathroom, o misha me'av kashin, or he finds constipation constantly, afilu achal ma'achalot tovim, even if you eat a good menu, v'shamar atzmo al pi harefuah, and you will guard yourself according to the ways of medicine described here, kol yamav yiyu machovim, all your days will be aching, v'kochot hashesh, and your strength will be weakening. V'achila gasa leguf kol adam, eating too much for anybody, k'mosam hamavet, is like poison, v'hu ikar lechol hachalaim, and it's the source of all sicknesses. V'rov hachalaim shabaim al ha'adam, most of the diseases that a person gets, einam ela, can be traced to two things, either o mipnei shemachalim ra'im, or he ingested bad foods, o mipnei shu memale bitno ve'ochel achila gasa afilu mima'achalim tovim, or he ate too much, even good foods, way too much, to the point of bursting. Hu sheshlomo amar b'chochmato. This is what Shlomo Melech said when he said in his wisdom, shomer piv u'lishono, shomer mitzarot nafsho. You guard your mouth and your tongue, you guarding your soul from trouble. Rashi on the verse only says it's talking about speech. Guarding your mouth and your tongue is one thing. But the Rambam sees a double expression here. Piv u'lishono. Says the Rambam, you have to guard your mouth and your tongue. Klomar, this means shomer piv mile'echol ma'achal ra'o milisvoa. You guard your mouth from your intake. Don't eat bad foods or getting too full. And you guard your tongue from speaking only what you need. Halacha tezayin, now we move on from foods to other health recommendations. Derech harechitza, the normal way of washing oneself. It's very important to keep personal hygiene. So wash yourself every once in a while. Sheyikanes adam lamerchatz. A person should enter the bathhouse mishiv'a yamim l'shiv'a yamim, once a week, once every 7 days.
Very good.
If they had a shower in their bathroom, in their house, maybe the Rambam would be a little more strict. But it was only outhouses and bathrooms, and you had to go to a certain place to have a merchatz, and it was a whole treatment there.
We laugh, but probably back then people did not do it as often.
I'm sure. They probably did it less. Exactly. Says the Rambam, when you go into the bath, v'lo yikanes samuch la'achila, don't go in right after you eat. Neither v'lo kashehu ra'ev, but not when you're hungry. Ela kasheyatchila mazon litakel, after you've eaten, when the food begins to digest. What should you do? You begin to wash your entire body with such hot water that can't burn the body yet. But you should wash your head alone with water that if it would go on your body it would burn you, but on your head it's not. So much hotter water. And then you go a little colder, lukewarm water. And then like lukewarm of the lukewarm. Until you end up washing yourself in cold water. So it's a full-on spa treatment. You're supposed to go from the hot tub into the cold tub until you get colder and colder. On your head, though, you should never put any water, lo poshrin v'lo tzonen, not warm and not cold, only hot water on the head. And in the rainy time when it's cold, you should not wash in cold water. And also you should not go into the water till you first sweat, and the commentaries say it means massage, like break the body means touch toughly different parts of the body so they're breaking apart a little bit, and then you're sweating, then you go into the water. Don't take too long in the bath. When you find yourself sweating and you've already put your body through it, dry yourself and go out. You must check yourself also for the bathroom here too. Before you go in and after you go out of the bathhouse, perhaps you need the bathroom. You should always check yourself for the bathroom needs. Before eating and after eating. Before and after relations. Before and after exercise. And before and after sleep. Total of 10 times a day, you're checking yourself for the bathroom. Halacha Yud Zayin. When a person leaves the bathhouse, Yilbash begadav, put on your clothes, v'yichaser and cover your head, b'bayit hachitzon, in the outer room. Before you go out, make sure you're fully covered, so that a cold wind shouldn't come over you. And this you have to be careful even in summertime. You should also wait a little bit after you leave the bathhouse, till you're calm. Your composure is back, v'yanuach gufo, and your body can rest, v'tasur hachamimut, and the heat leaves, v'achar kach yochal, and only then should you eat. V'im yashen ma'at k'sheyatza min ha'merchatz, kodem achilaf, you can chop around a little sleep after the bathhouse before you eat, that's very good. V'lo yishtem mayim karim b'tzeto min ha'merchatz, you should not drink cold water when you leave the bathhouse, v'ein tzadich lomar shelo yishteh b'merchatz, and certainly you shouldn't drink in the bathhouse. V'im tzameh, but if you find yourself super thirsty after you leave, and you cannot resist, you can't hold yourself back. If you must drink water, mix it with wine or honey and then drink. Another good custom could be to anoint yourself with oils in the bathhouse in the rainy season. After you dry yourself, that's also good. Halacha Yudchet. The person should not be too habitual about letting blood constantly. It was considered a very healthy thing to take out blood every once in a while. You shouldn't do it too much. Only let blood if you need it very much. And when you do the bloodletting, you should not do it not in the rainy, hot time. Not in the hot time, not in the cold time. Only in the autumn and the spring. Nisan time, Tishrei time. After you hit 50 years of age, no bloodletting at all. You should not let blood and on the same day go to the bathhouse. Neither should you let blood and immediately travel. Or the day you arrive from a trip, you shouldn't let blood either. Eat and drink less on a day of bloodletting, less than what you usually do. You should rest on this day of bloodletting. This is a day for not having any exercise. No working, no exertion, no taking strolls. Halacha Yutet. Number 19. Shichvat zera. Simen hikoach haguf v'chayav u'ma'or ha'inayim. Is the strength of the body, its life, and the light of your eyes. If you're releasing too much of it, haguf kaleh, the body is going to get destroyed, or baleh, some people have, it's going to get weakened. The kocho kaleh, your strength is going to finish. V'chayav avdim, and your life will go to waste. Hu sha'amar Shlomo b'chokhmato, said Shlomo Malach in his wisdom, al titen lanashim chilecha, don't give your strength to women. Kol ha'shatuf b'vi'ilah, a person who is steeped in relations, zikna kofetzat alav, elderliness, old age will jump upon him. The kochot tashesh, he will find his strength weakening. The enav kehot, he's going to get weaker eyesight. V'reach ra nodef mipiv umishechio, and a bad smell will come from his mouth and from his armpit. Usa'ar rosho, v'gabot enav, v'risei enav noshrot, your hair will fall out from your head, from your eyebrows, from your eyelids. Usa'ar zikono v'shechio, but your beard here and your armpit here, usa'ar raglav, and your foot here, raveh, will actually increase. Shinav noflot, your teeth will fall out. V'harbe ke'evim chutz me'elu ba'im alav, and many other aches and diseases will come upon you besides for that. Amru chachmei arofim, the sages of the medicine said, echad me'elef met b'sh'ar cholaim, 1 out of 1,000 dies from other sicknesses, v'ha'elef me'rov ha'tashmish, and the other 1,000 die from too much relations. Lefichach, therefore, tzarich adam lezaher b'davar zeh. A person should be very careful about this. Im ratzah lichyot b'tova, if he wants to live a good life. V'lo yiv'al, and he should only engage in relations ela k'sheyimtza gufo bari v'chazak biyoter, only when he finds his body in an extreme state of health and strength. V'hu mitkasher be shelo l'dato, and he finds his organ becoming hard too much without his intent. Even when he diverts his mind to something else, the erection remains as it was. And he finds the bottom of his waist is very heavy, as though the tendons of the testicles are being pulled apart, and his flesh is hot. This person must engage in relations. It's actually medicinal, beneficial, health-wise, to engage in relations. But otherwise, stay away. The commentaries note you also have an obligation to your wife. That's again halachic obligation. Here we're talking about from health standpoint. If your wife needs it, of course. Lo yiv al adam, a person should not engage in relations. V'hu saveya when he's too full. V'lo ra'ev nor when he's hungry. Ela achar she'itakel hamazon shebeme'av, only after the food digests in your stomach. V'yivdok in kavav, you must check for bathroom needs. Kodem bi'ila v'achar bi'ila, before and after relations. V'lo yiv al mi'umad v'lo mi'yushav. You should not engage in relations standing or sitting, v'lo bevet hamerchatz, nor in the bathhouse, v'lo bayom she'ikanes lamerchatz, nor on the day that you're going to the bathhouse, v'lo bayom hakazah, nor on the day of bloodletting, v'lo bayom yitzi'al aderech, o bi'amin aderech, and nor on the day that you're traveling or coming back from a journey, lo lifnehem v'lo la'acharayhem, or the day before or after. According to halacha, you must engage with your wife the day before you leave to a trip. And so the commentary has explained, it depends how you're traveling. If you're traveling by foot, then you shouldn't engage in relationship. If you're traveling by other ways, by coach, then you should. Halacha chaf. Kol hamanhig atzmo bidrachim elu shehorenu. Anybody who behaves in these ways that we have taught, says the Rambam, ani arevlo, I personally guarantee, she'eno bali decholi kol yamav, he will not come to any sickness all his days, ad sheyazkin harbe v'yamut, till he lives a long, ripe old age, and then he'll die. Ve'eno tzarich l'rofeh, he'll never need a doctor, v'yeh gufo shalem v'omed al buryo kol yamav, his body will be complete, and there, health-wise, fully healthy all his days. Ela im ken, this is an exception. Unless hayagufo ra mitchilat briyato, if your body was a bad condition from the beginning of your creation, or im hayaragil b'minhag min aminagot ha'ra'im, or you took on a bad habit mitchilat molato, from the day you were born, or im tavo makat dever or makat batzoret la'olam, or if a pestilence, a pandemic, or a drought comes to the world, then I can't guarantee. But if you're a healthy body, healthy constitution, and you behave in this way, you're guaranteed health. The Rebbe would say that we're in Chodesh Iyar now. Iyar stands for Ani Hashem Rof'echa. I am Hashem, your doctor. When Hashem heals, we say, Kol ha'machala lo asim alecha. No sickness even comes upon you. So the Rambam was telling us that every human being could be like Hashem. Every human being could bring upon himself such a situation where he won't even get sick. However, Chaf Aleph, the Rambam concludes almost the parak, all of these good customs which we said, only if you're healthy you should use them. If you're sick, or one of your limbs is sick, or you had a bad custom for many years, there's other ways for you, and other behaviors, according to your sickness, as I will explain in my book on medicine. Or it means, as will be explained in medicine works, not his own work. But know this, any change from the conduct which you're used to is the beginning of your sickness. Don't change your habits too easily before you get a doctor's advice. However, if you don't have a doctor in your area, then whether you're healthy or sick, do not move from all these ways said in this chapter, for every of these brings to a good future. So even if you're sick and you have no doctor, follow these advice. Chav Gimel, the final halacha, kol ir, she'en ba asarat dvarim ma'ilu. Any city which does not have the following 10 positions. It could be one person having multiple positions, but it has to have 10 positions filled. En talmid chacham rashai ladur b'tocha. No wise man can live there. Ve'elu hen, and these they are. Rofeh, a doctor. Ve'uman, and a bloodletter. Ubet hamerchatz, and a bathhouse. Bet hakisei, a bathroom. Umayim mitzuyin, and easily accessible water. Could go naharu mayam, like a river or a stream. Ubet hakneset, a shul. Lamed tinokot, a teacher. V'lavlar, a scribe. The gabayit tzedakah, and someone who collects tzedakah. Ubeidin makim v'chovshim, and a court that can hit people and put them into jail. That's the ideal city. And otherwise, you shouldn't live there for your Talmid Chacham.